Hi, welcome to my channel. It's Liberty. If you're new here, I make videos about witchcraft, the occult, art, design, and the fun adventures of being a freelancer. Today, I'd like to talk about exploring the human psyche with art. Exploring your own human psyche through creating art and through divination like the tarot, water scrying, and even cloud watching. If you're not familiar with what divination is, scrying, and the tarot, divination is a form of speaking with the divine, or in this case, the divine being your subconscious mind. Tarot cards are a set of 72 cards that outline the small, everyday journey that a human goes through, and also the larger journeys or larger concepts that a human typically learns in one's life. To use the word that Carl Jung used, the tarot has within it archetypes. These archetypes are different people that represent different concepts of the unconscious or subconscious mind. The words subconscious and unconscious are usually interchangeable when talking about psychology. Sub meaning underneath consciousness, and unconscious being the opposite of consciousness. So they really mean the same thing when talking about psychology. The unconscious or subconscious, I'll probably use subconscious for this video. The subconscious mind is underneath the conscious mind, meaning that it is kind of like a running water underneath the bridge of consciousness. It's running literally underneath the radar of the conscious mind. And even if you're one of the people that says that they don't dream, your subconscious mind is still continuing to function while you're asleep and producing dreamlike concoctions, even if you don't remember or if you don't experience these dreams. The interesting thing about the subconscious mind is that it's producing these dreamlike states even when you're conscious. Your brain waves show, like in an MRI, I think it's called, or maybe just brainwave scans, your brainwaves are shown to be more active in specific times of sleep due to the subconscious mind taking over the entire mind to put things together. But just because you can't see it on a brain scan while you're conscious doesn't mean that the subconscious mind is not still running. That was my point. The subconscious mind is the underlying framework that you see the world through. So it's like the programming of your computer system. So everything that you are able to see, you're able to understand and see that because your subconscious mind can process it. If your subconscious mind cannot process it, it will either be ignored or will be seen as a trauma and then compartmentalized to deal with at a later date or to never deal with. That being said, this is an example of as above, so below, as within, so without. Since your subconscious mind controls what you can and cannot process in the world, you can interpret seemingly random patterns as signs or messages from your subconscious mind. In another video, I touched on a story about Carl Jung's patient that completely lied his entire patienthood, and he one day burst into tears after lying for weeks about his psychological situation. He burst into tears because he had come to an epiphany of something, I don't know what, but he came to an epiphany of something big, and he came to that through the lies he had been telling. And that's an example of the fact that whatever stories you tell, since you're telling them, they can only come from one place, and that is you. And because they came from you, they tell who you are. They tell your story. This concept is actually used a lot in therapy for children. When children go through a trauma, they seek to understand and process that trauma through play. So a therapist will play dolls with the child, and the dialogue between the dolls can very often show the state of the mind that the child's in. And because our minds are essentially older children, the subconscious mind acts very much like a child. So one could say that divination is a way to play and to understand yourself better. You're telling yourself stories to understand your own story better. That's the psychological explanation of divination. There's also a metaphysical explanation of divination, which ties into the Hermetic principle of all is mind, which means that we're basically all living in the mind of God. That's one way you could explain that. And because we're all living in the mind of God, we are in our little speck of consciousness, a part of God's consciousness, and therefore reading, say, the signs in the clouds can give us insight to the larger consciousness of the world or the universe. Honestly, magical concepts have probably like 5 explanations to each concept, and they go through like logical, psychological. That's funny. I never noticed that. Logical, psychological. Logical, psychological, metaphysical, like quantum, religious, spiritual, and then like a mixture of all of those. There's different ways to explain these that will make sense to different people, but the explanations themselves are never, I don't think they're ever completely true, because one of the Hermetic principles is all truths are half-truths, which is great because there is no absolute truth. There's always more. There's always more to learn. So, that being said, art therapy is a specific wing of therapy where patients can express themselves through art, either abstract or not abstract, and they can then interpret that art and explain how it made them feel, what story goes with what character, and it's very similar to the child psychology that I was talking about earlier with toys, explaining, or like the dialogue can explain how that child's mind is in that moment. So with your own art, if you're looking to explore your own psyche, whatever skill level you have, you can make characters, you can make up stories for those characters, you can have characters interact and interpret that in a way that feels good to you. And it is very important that it is very personal, because there are cross-cultural symbolisms, cross-cultural symbols that date back to the beginning of humans, that are, I wouldn't say absolute, but they do have a more definitive definition. However, each person has their own experiences with all symbols and all objects. And it's incredibly important when interpreting your own psychological creations, like art, to interpret them through your own lens. And I say that to say, do not give your power away to anyone, whether that is a therapist, your parent, your partner, your best friend, your dog, your cat, I don't care. Your psychology is yours. You can definitely listen to other people and listen to what they think or they believe those symbols to mean. But take it with a grain of salt, because you are the only person that lives in your psyche. I find that this is a very good tool to use when you may not understand the feelings that are going on in your body, or you may not understand exactly how to process something going on in your life, like grief, something like big, traumatic. And it's even good to interpret dreams. I think that's a form of divination as well. So speaking about the divination, you can interpret the symbols in whatever way feels right to you. So you can create the entire artwork and then interpret that, or you can stare at some fractal pattern like nature or water, or even use a divination system like runes or the tarot to interpret. They're systems to help you understand what you're feeling, basically. And touching on the dreams for a second, it's if you know someone who knows how to interpret dreams and you tell them your dream, be careful, because they will know a lot more about you than you might know about yourself. And sometimes I feel like that's how my art is. I create it, I put it out there, and I might not interpret every piece. And who knows, maybe other people know a little bit more about my shadow than I do. Thanks for watching. If you haven't already, subscribe to my channel. Comment down below if there's something that you would like for me to cover. And I look forward to the next video. See ya!